cost all over quantity. This divided by quantity, what will you get? Plus this, what will you get? Is that not it? So in this particular case, this divided by quantity will give you what? Average fixed cost, which means that the average variable cost, the average cost is equal to what? Average fixed cost. What is this? Plus this divided by this, what will you get? Average variable cost. So you will get the average variable cost, which means the average cost that you are looking at is equal to, which is equal to total cost divided by quantity, can also be calculated as the summation of what? Average fixed cost and average variable cost. So in a situation where you are not given the total cost, but given average fixed cost and average variable cost, you can still find what? Average cost by adding average fixed cost to average variable cost. Are we together? Okay. Beyond this, we also have one important cost function, which is the marginal cost. And that particular marginal cost is also called an incremental cost. It is incremental in a way that we are looking at quantity being a driver of what? Cost. In other words, how much cost we are going to incur, extra cost we are going to incur. So incremental cost or extra cost or additional cost. So marginal cost, we are looking at the incremental cost or extra cost or the additional cost you will incur to be able to produce one more unit of what? To be able to produce one more unit of output. So for average marginal cost, we are looking at the extra amount that you are going to spend if you want to produce one more unit. Okay, so for instance, if I'm incurring 1,000 cedis to produce one output, if I want to produce 2 outputs, and I'm going to incur 1,050, which means the extra cost is what? 50 cedis. So that extra cost, which is the 50 cedis, is referred to as what? As a marginal cost. And that marginal cost is nothing but just a what? A change in total cost, all over change in what? Quantity or change in output. All over change in output. All over change in output. All over change in output. So when you plot these particular curves, so we have average fixed cost. We also have average variable cost. We also have average cost. We also have what? Marginal cost. Average cost. Okay. Remember last week we had treated the fixed cost curve, and then which one? Total cost curve. Okay. And of course, the total variable cost curve. Like I mentioned, just to give a quick recap, we have the quantity here, we have the cost. So this cost can be fixed cost, average cost, marginal cost, average fixed cost, average variable cost. So instead of just specifying average cost or average fixed cost or total cost, just write what? Cost. So like I said, fixed cost, whether you produce or you don't produce, you will still incur the fixed cost. So fixed cost is what? It's fixed irrespective of the level of output. So what you are finding here is the fixed cost, which is fixed cost. Are you getting it? And I mentioned that the variable cost that you are going to incur is a function of what? Output. Because as you begin to produce, you will be buying inputs to produce. And that particular input cost is what? The variable cost. If you don't produce, will you incur any cost on input? No. So variable cost will start from 0. And as you begin to produce, variable costs will also begin to what? To increase or to rise. So you can have variable costs like this. Variable costs like this. Variable costs like this. We also have what we call the total cost. And the total cost is the summation of what? The variable cost and then the what? The fixed cost. Remember, because it's summation, you cannot start from here. Remember, on this particular axis, quantity remains what? Remains zero here. Here, quantity is what? Zero. So we are going to begin the total cost from where? From the beginning of what? The fixed cost, to take care of the fixed cost. So from here, also going, will give us the what? The total cost. Will give us the total cost. Will give us the total cost. Now, this particular gap that we are looking at is the fixed cost. Is the fixed cost. And when that particular fixed cost is added to this particular curve, which is the variable cost, it should give us the what? The total cost, which means that the gap between the total cost and the variable cost is also called the what? It's also called the fixed cost, which means this particular gap and this particular gap should be the same. And that particular gap is called the what? The fixed cost that you are incurring. Is the fixed cost that you are incurring. Okay. Alternatively, this particular case, in a situation where a firm does not have cost curves behaving like this, note that in some instances it can behave like this. Can behave like this. So remember, which one will be the total cost? The top one. So this will be the total cost. Here will be the variable cost. So I can ask you, what is the fixed cost? So if you have, so what will be the fixed cost? Where? So this will be the fixed cost, or from here will be the fixed cost. So if I say maybe 500, here is 0, and you know definitely the fixed cost will be what? Will be 500. Are we together? So in this case, you can just even decide to do what? Plus, and you can get this one. Okay, now let's look at the average curves, the one that we listed. Because this average cost curves, average variable cost curves, average fixed cost curves are extremely important in determining an optimum level of production. Now, if we have something like this, this is quantity, this is cost. We are looking at the relationship among the costs that we enumerated. So the heading is the relationship amount, average fixed cost, average variable cost, average cost, and then marginal cost. And marginal cost. Those, yes? Which one? Which one? The 500. Yes, that's the total cost. No, because it's starting from somewhere in the axis at zero output. It is starting somewhere on the cost curve. You are already incurring a cost somewhere, but output is what? 0. And what cost will you incur when output is 0? It's a fixed cost. So this is a fixed cost, and the fixed cost is fixed. But you look at this one, it's not fixed. From this particular point to this particular point, that is the what? The fixed cost. And because it is beginning from here going, it comes to make it what? the total cost because that variable aspect has been added. So even if I just do it this way, if I just cancel this and I leave it this way, and I just leave it this way, even if I don't write this, you should know this is total cost curve. I getting it. Why? Just because it is starting somewhere here. So, and even if I also cancel this and say here, you should know this is what? It can never be total cost unless you are assuming fixed cost is what? It's zero. Are you getting it? Okay. Those online, what are you projecting? They are seeing the excellent. So for those online, we said that we have the average fixed cost, which we know is what? Fixed cost per unit of output. And we said when you plot the curve, it does what? It decreases continuously. Is that not it? But it will never touch the quantity axis. Because if you have fixed costs that you are dividing by output, there is no where the result will be what? Zero. It could be 0.000000, maybe 1, but it will never be what? Zero. So it will still continue to fall. And this will be our average what? Average fixed cost. This will be our average fixed cost. When you plot your average variable cost, you will have average variable cost. When you plot the average variable cost, you will have average variable cost like U shape. Average, let me just bring it down a bit. You will have average variable cost. You can get this explain what is the name? The illustrations. For instance, if you have quantity here, you have maybe fixed cost, you have variable cost, you have total cost, you have maybe what is the average fixed cost? Let me just leave this one. You have quantity, you have fixed cost, you have variable cost, you have total cost, you have total cost, you have average fixed cost, average variable cost, average what cost, and you also have marginal cost. So let's say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Fixed cost, maybe 1,000. Here, what will be the amount here? Yes, it will repeat throughout. So 1,000, 1,000, 1,000. Let's say variable cost. Here will be what? Here will be what? It will be zero. Because I mentioned variable cost. If you don't produce, you don't incur. This is are you getting it? Quantity is zero, so you don't produce, you don't incur any variable cost. Okay. It is only when you incur, when you produce one that you will have what? Variable cost. So maybe let's say our variable cost will be maybe say 50. Here will be maybe say 75. Here, I'm just assuming, here will be 85. Maybe 77. Just an example. Here will be maybe 80, 82. What will be the total cost here? This plus this 1,000, and the rest. Average fixed cost. Here will be dash. Here will be this one divided by. You will get what? 1,000. This one divided by 2, 500. This, in that order. Average variable cost will be what? So this one will be what? Excellent. 50 divided by 1. Here will also be what? 75 divided by what? 2 in that order. Are you getting it? And the average cost will now be what? Divided by what? 1. So the first one will be what? And then the second one will be 1050 divided by what? Divided by 1. Are we together? Actually, are we together? This one is okay. So we are just average cost. Remember, we said the average cost is what? Total cost, all over quantity. We are on this particular point. The total cost is what? 1050, 1050, and quantity is what? 1. So our average cost will be 1050 divided by what? 1, which will give us 1050. Is that not it? The next one, the total cost will give us will be what? 1075. Is that not it? Yeah. Divided by 2. This is what you are going to get. The other one will be 1070 what? 77 divided by what? 3. The other one will be 1082 divided by what? 4. And then the marginal cost. So the marginal cost will be change in total cost all over change in what? Quantity. So in this case, we are looking at the first one is 0, then the second one, the total cost. Let me good. That's it. Excellent. Then that's all. Class has ended. Okay. So if I don't strengthen the question, you people will get 100. This one will be what? Change in total cost, all over change in what? Quantity. So the change in total cost, we are looking at, this is the total cost, the first one. So it's normally 0 or dash. So the second one will be what? This is the first, you have the total cost, maybe the current total cost minus all over the current quantity. Maybe I'll just use this one and then 0, quantity 1, 0. So here is what? Total cost at output 1 is what? 10 what? Minus output 0. All over quantity 1 minus what? 0. So here will be what? 50 over 1, which is what? 50. So here will be what? 50. So the second one will also be what? Minus what? 1050. Are you getting it? What will you get? 25. Then the other one will be this one minus this one. Divided by this one. Already here is 1, 1, 1, 1. So as to divide to be 1, 1, 1, 1. So this one minus this one will be what? 2. And then this one 2 minus this one in that order. Are you together? Are we together? So when you do all this and plot the curves, you are going to get a shape like this. You are going to get a shape like this. Okay. So the quantity will not follow. It's not all the time that no, it's not all the time that the quantity will be 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So that's why I'm saying that we need to be divided. But in this case, it is just 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So the quantity could also be 2, 4, 6, 8, and the rest. So always you need to divide by the change in the quantity. Okay. Any question? Okay. Now let's proceed. The other one that we are going to look at is the average what? So I've counted the average cost curve. So the average cost curve comes above the average what? The average variable cost. And one important thing that you will know is that for the marginal cost, it cuts the minimum of what? Average cost and average variable what? Cost. So marginal cost, when you plot that particular incremental cost, it goes like this. Remember, this minus this is what? 5 pen. Is that not 5? 5. So what I see, this one is falling, and then here it's beginning to do what again? To right. So when you plot it, you are going to get something like this. So this is the marginal cost. I don't want to waste time on those ones. So this is like this. It's like this. So please note that From the what is the name? The slide, everything is there. No, I don't have time to wait. Look at it in the. Even though I said something like this will come, but look at it in the slide, and that's why we have worked. But I have a target for today. There is a clear table on the slide. I don't know which particular slide. There is a clear table on it. No, this is not the question that will come. You fill in the gaps. Okay. So now let's look at something. A very important thing that you should note is really the relationship between marginal cost and average cost. That is what is actually very important. The marginal cost and average cost. When you look at the average cost, remember the average cost, it takes care of the average fixed cost and then the what? It's the average variable cost. So by just looking at the relationship between the two, you are indirectly looking at the relationship between marginal cost and all the other cost functions. Now, let's look at this. So I'm just going to remove only the two curves cost. So I'm going to have what is here? Average cost. So where should marginal cost cut it? So this is the what? The marginal cost. Now let's look at the relationship between the two. As a firm, so now let's look at this relationship. So I can cancel this one. When you look at this, you will realize that this is the minimum point of what? Average cost. Is that not it? This is the minimum point of average cost. And at that minimum point of average cost, please note that at the minimum point of what? Average cost. At the minimum point of average cost, what is happening? That particular average cost will be equal to what? Marginal cost, because they are meeting at the same what point. So the minimum point or the minimum average cost, okay, your lowest average cost as a firm should be equal to the incremental cost you are incurred to produce extra amount of what? Output. Now let's look at it. When you look at it from this particular side, at the minimum point, your marginal cost is equal to what? Average cost. Now let's look at it from the left-hand side here. So this is 1, this is 2. Here, what is happening to average cost? It is what? Falling. What is happening to average marginal cost too? It is also what? Falling. Now, both marginal cost, when both marginal cost, okay, and average cost are what? Are falling. When both marginal cost and average cost are falling, one falls faster than the other. Is that not it? Yeah. Which one falls faster than the other? The marginal cost falls faster than the average cost, and therefore it lies below it. So when both marginal cost and average cost are falling, the marginal cost will fall faster than the average cost, and therefore lies below it. So because it's falling faster than the average cost, marginal cost will lie below what? Below the average cost. Now let's look at the other side, which is when both are what? Both are rising. So when both are rising, one rises faster than the other. So in this particular case, which one rises faster than the other? marginal cost. And that is why it is lying above the average cost. So when both marginal cost and average cost are increasing or are or are rising, marginal cost rises or increases faster than the average cost, and therefore lies above it, and therefore lies above it, and therefore lies above it, and therefore lies above it. In other words, when your average cost is increasing, your marginal cost must also what? Increase. Or when your marginal cost is increasing, average cost must also what? Increase. But the rate of increment in marginal cost will be excellent, will be higher than the rate of increment in what? Average cost. When marginal cost and average cost, when average cost is falling, your marginal cost must also what? Fall. Is that not right? When your marginal cost is falling, average cost must also what? Fall. But the rate of fall or decrease will be what? Will be higher than that of the marginal cost. Are you getting it? When you put all these three together, or what we have done together, it tells you that irrespective of the relationship, marginal cost must always pass through the minimum point of what? Average cost. So if I ask you in an exam, explain why marginal cost passes through the minimum point of average cost. It's just this three, or these two, here, and then what? Here. You will notice that, for instance, if let's say maybe SIF match, we are matching, we have this lane here, soldiers here, and maybe soldiers here. They are matching, and they want to curve. Remember, for them to be on the straight path, those here are curving. These people will also curve. These people will also curve. But one lane will curve faster than the other. Is that not it? To be able to meet at some what? At some point. So which one? This particular one should what? Should be faster in curving, followed by this one, and this one will also curve, but slower, before they can all come to meet the same speed. So it's basically this. When this one is falling, this one must what? Fall, but it should be more than this one must fall, but it should be more than this one. And when it is increasing, this one too should increase what? Faster than this one. So when you put that particular analogy together, then the average point of what? The point of what? As the minimum point of average cost should be the point marginal cost will what? Will pass through, or should be the point where the true curve will what? Will meet. So when marginal cost is falling, average cost must also fall. Is that not it? And when it is increasing, average cost must also what? Increase. In other words, when both marginal cost and average cost are falling, which one falls faster than the other? And then the other one too will also hold. So because of that, marginal cost will always cut the minimum point of what? Average cost. And at the minimum point of average cost, marginal cost is always equal to what? Your average cost. Any question before we proceed? Okay. So, okay. So we are going to introduce additional layer, which is from the revenue side. Remember, we are talking about revenues. So now let's cost. So let's look at the revenue side. Can I cancel now? So from the revenue side, we have what is called the total revenue. And the total revenue we obviously know is price times what? Quantity. Is that not it? When you look at it from this perspective too, we also have what is called the average one revenue. And the average revenue is the total revenue per unit of what? Output, or per quantity. So which means that our average revenue will be our total revenue divided by what? Quantity, divided by quantity. We also have what is called the what? The marginal revenue. And our marginal revenue, just like the cost, the marginal cost, which is the incremental cost or the extra cost, the marginal revenue is also the what? The incremental what? Revenue or the extra what? Revenue that you will what? Get additional revenue after selling one more unit of what? Output. Remember the cost side, we're talking about marginal cost, the extra cost you will incur for producing extra units. Then from the revenue, is the revenue that you will, the extra revenue that you will get from the sale of what? Extra or additional what? Units of what? Output. So in this particular case, that extra addition, okay, to your total revenue will be the change in total revenue, all over what? All over change in quantity. In other words, it is the current total revenue, maybe say total revenue 1 minus total revenue 0, which is the previous one, all over quantity 1 minus what? Quantity 0. Or it could also be your total revenue output what? 2 minus total revenue output 1 all over quantity 2 minus what? Quantity 1. This will give you the marginal what? Revenue, which is very important in to a firm. Because your focus is on what extra revenue am I going to get? What extra revenue am I going to get? Remember last we mentioned about perfect comparative markets. Perfect comparative markets. We mentioned something like on perfect comparative market. And we said that for perfect comparative markets, they are what we call the what? Price takers. Is that not it? Remember, we said they are price takers. For a particular market to hold as a perfect comparative market, we give some conditions. We give some conditions. We give some conditions. We give some conditions. And one of the conditions was there should be what? Pre-entry and pre-exit. In other words, if this is the market, which is comparative, to be able to enter as a seller, there shouldn't be any hindrance or restrictions preventing you from joining the market. And if the market is not good and you want to leave, there should also be no restrictions for you to preventing you from also leaving the market. So the market for a perfect comparative is what? Free entry, free exit, free entry, free exit. Okay. The second one will be what? There should be many buyers, okay, and many sellers. There should be many buyers and sellers. If the sellers are many, no one can set the price. You will be a price what taker. Okay. The other one is there should be no transport cost or advertisements, because once you have transport costs or advertisement cost, it will influence the what? The price, because you would have factored in the cost of transportation into the price, or you would have factored in the amount you are using to advertise into the price, which will definitely do what? Change how much you are selling. Okay. So we are holding those particular ones what? Constant. We have several of them, but I'm concentrating on this two. Remember, I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of where I mentioned earlier that a question will be coming. And the question, you will need these two to explain it. So please note this first two. Okay. So later I'll show you how it will be put. The explanation or the answer will be just this one and what? This one and then just being price takers. Let's make progress. So remember I said because they are price takers, price is what? It's fixed. You remember, price is fixed. So if price is fixed, at each quantity is the same what? Price, which means your total revenue, so let's say prices, example, let's say price is 5. So quantity 1, 2, 3, 4. So total revenue at quantity 1 will be what? 5 times what? 1. Is that not it? Which will give us 5. So our total revenue will be, so maybe let's say quantity 1, 2, 3. So total revenue will be what? 5. This is price. So 5, 5, 5. Total revenue will be what? 5. At quantity 2, total revenue will be what? Excellent. Total revenue will be 10. Here, total revenue will be 15. Total revenue will be 15. Are we together? It goes on as we proceed. We also have what is called the average what? Revenue. And what did I say? Average revenue is what? Total revenue divided by what? Divided by quantity. So here will be the total revenue divided by what? Quantity. Is that not it? So this total revenue divided by this, what will you get? This divided by this. This divided by this. 5. Now, we also have what is called the marginal revenue. So we also have what is called the marginal revenue. And like I said, the marginal revenue is revenue divided by change in revenue divided by change in what? Quantity. So the first one is normally dash because you don't have revenue for the previous one. Okay. So the marginal revenue here will be what? The change in total revenue all over change in what? Quantity. So the change in total revenue will be total revenue output 2 minus total revenue all over output 2 minus output 1. So in this case, it will be what? 10 minus 5 all over, which will get you 5. So here will be 5. The other one will also be what? 15 minus what? 10 all over. You will get what? 5. You will get what? 5. What are we observing here? For a perfect competitive market, the price that you are charging is equal to what? Excellent. It's equal to average revenue, which is equal to what? Excellent, which is equal to marginal revenue. Which is equal to marginal revenue. Which is equal to marginal revenue. So in this particular case, we have our price here, okay, which is fixed, which means that this particular curve that we are looking at is the same thing as what? Average revenue, which is also the same thing as what? Marginal revenue. If you want, it is also the same thing as what? Price. Or it is also the same thing as what? We have quantity here. Is that not it? And we also have what? Price here. When you plot a curve between showing the relationship between quantity, price and quantity, that particular curve is called what? From the demand side, it's called demand. It's called a demand curve, which means this particular curve is also called what? The demand curve. That is for a perfect competitive what market. So for a perfect competitive market, their average revenue is the same thing as their what? Their marginal revenue, which is the same thing as what? The price. And that particular curve is also the same thing as their what? Their demand curve. Is their demand curve, which is perfectly, is it elastic or inelastic? Perfectly elastic or inelastic? Perfectly elastic. Where is the mark there? Well, the marks sheet. Today I want to be given marks. Okay. Are we together? Yeah. Okay. Can we make progress? Okay. So now let's bring this together. We have the cost side and then the revenue side. For all this, we are looking at the short run. So here, as a firm, what output should you produce in order to be able to maximize revenue? Or what output should you produce in order to be able to maximize what? Cost. In order to be able to maximize profits. Now, we know for sure that profit is equal to what? Total revenue minus your total cost. Okay, total revenue minus total cost. And we know already our total revenue is what? Price times quantity minus total cost, which will be what? Plus variable costs. Okay, we want to bring this together. Now, when you look at the profit maximizing output in the short run of a firm, it means in the short run, at what output should I produce as a firm to be able to maximize my profit, to be able to maximize my profit? Like I mentioned, let's bring this particular one together with the cost side. Remember, so the heading is short run profit. This is profit. Short run profit, maximizing output. Maximizing output. Short run profit, maximizing output. I'm heading to what will be coming in the exam. So we have this one. We have this one. If I write this, here it could be cost, it could also be revenue. So I'm bringing the two together. Now, I have this one as my what? Average revenue, which is equal to what? Which is equal to price. If you want, you can add the demand side. You can add the demand side. Okay, you can add the demand side. Now, we also have from the cost side, we also have what is called the what? The first one, which is the average what? Here, I'm just going to use only the average cost and then the marginal cost. Only the average cost and marginal cost. We can add the rest. But if we have this, where do you think marginal cost should cut the average cost from? Excellent. From the what? From the minimum point. From the minimum point. From the minimum point. So if you cast it from a minimum, this one will be what? Marginal cost. Remember, average variable cost will also be something like this. Is that not it? For the average what? Variable cost. Is that not it? And fixed cost will also be average fixed cost will also be like this. Are you getting it? I don't want to dirty the graphs, but it should be like this. Because those are not going to be an area of concentration for now. So we have only this one. We have only this one. So what is the condition if a firm wants to maximize what the maximizing output? Yes. So if the firm wants to maximize output or profit, the key condition is you should produce at a point where, please note, where the marginal revenue, the extra revenue that you are getting should be equal to the extra cost that you are incurring. At that particular output level, that is where your concentration should be. Now, let's look at it. So please note, this is very important. This is profit maximizing what? Output condition. So it should be on the output at where the marginal revenue is equal to what? Marginal cost. Here, which one is our marginal revenue? Is that not? This is the marginal revenue. And where is the marginal cost? Are you getting it? At which point are they equal? Which means their point of what? Their point of intersection. Is that not it? So where are they meeting? It's here. Is that not it? So this is where they are meeting. So this is the first step. To always look out for where the marginal revenue is meeting with the what? The marginal cost. Please note. Always look out for where the marginal revenue meets with the marginal what? Meets with the marginal cost. Once you find that particular point, this particular point will let you know whether the firm is making a profit or a loss. Here, at this particular point, what will be the output level? You trace it, trace it to the quantity axis. You trace it to the quantity axis. I'm going to put star. You trace it to the quantity axis. 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 So now you look at it in a way that at this particular output level that you have found here, at a point where this marginal revenue is called to marginal cost, that is here, you trace it to the output level. You then compare the what? The revenue that you are making, which is the average what? Revenue. You compare the average revenue. Compare the average revenue. You compare the average revenue to your average what? Cost. To the average what? Cost. To the average cost. To the average cost. Remember we said our profit is equal to total revenue minus what? Total cost. And please note, this is the total, what is the name? Total profit. You can also be looking at the profit per unit of what? Output. So profit per unit of output will be what? This one minus this one divided by what? Output. Is that not it? So here simply also means this divided by this. What will you get? Is that not it? Minus this divided by this. Average cost will give you the profit per unit of what? Output. So that is why we are comparing, to be able to know whether you are making a profit or what? A loss. Yes. No, we are still, going through it. It will come. And that is even what will be coming in the exam. Okay, so now let's look at something here. At this particular output, the next thing is to trace it to hit your what? Because we already know our what? Average revenue, which is here. Is that not it? So what is missing? Average cost, which is what? Here. Are you getting it? So at this particular output, what will be the average cost? What will be the average cost? You just trace it to hit the average cost curve. Is that not it? You just trace it to hit the average cost curve and then do what? Trace it to hit the what? The cost function. So here will be the average what? Cost. Remember, here will be the average what? Revenue. We are using average revenue. It will also be the price and the rest. But our concentration is on this one and this one. Are we together? Okay. So in this particular case, if you compare which one is greater than the other, which one is above the other? Average cost, which means your average cost, okay, is greater than your average what? Revenue, which means the firm is making a what? A loss. So what we are under in the short run, the firm is making a loss of this particular shaded what? Area. And that particular loss will be what? The average what? Cost minus the average what? Revenue. Times what? Is the region here times this minus this times what? Excellent. Times your quantity. Times your quantity. In other words, it could also be average what? Revenue minus what? Average cost times what? Quantity. But here, the value here will be what? Negative. Is that not it? Because your revenue, average revenue is what? It's less than the average what cost. So in this particular case, we are making a loss. And the loss is given in this particular shaded area. So this is the situation where the firm is making a loss in the what? In the short run. In the short run. Are we together? So please just note that the loss is incurred because the average cost curve is above the what? The average what? Revenue curve. The average revenue curve. Can I, which one should I cancel? Can I cancel here? Okay. So now, in a situation, so let's look at the profit side. So we have this one, profit side. We have this one. So this is the loss situation. This is the cost. This is also what? Revenue. So let's have this one. Remember, this one will be our average one. Revenue, price, or what? Or demand. So here we have, here will be our what? Average cost. Marginal cost should cut it from the minimum point. So this will be our marginal cost. So remember, the first condition is to look for a point where the marginal revenue equals the marginal cost. This is the marginal revenue, okay, equals the marginal cost. This is the one, the point of intersection. So we trace it to hit the what? The quantity axis. So this will be the quantity, and this will be the point where the first condition, where the two actually meet. The next is to compare. So what will be our average revenue at this particular point? Just here. And what will be the average cost? It is what? It's here. So you trace it to look for the average cost there, which is what? Are you getting it? Which is here. So at that particular average cost curve, we trace it to the what? The cost axis to get our what? Here will be our what? Average revenue. So here, what are we seeing? The average revenue is above the what? The average what? Cost at this particular output. Is that not? And if it is this particular output, maybe Q5, what is happening here?
Sorry, I didn't tell you.
Is greater than what? Average revenue. At this particular output, this is going to be the maximum profit that you are going to. You will make the maximum profit if you produce at this particular what? Quantity. So here, our average revenue is actually greater than our what? Our average cost. So this particular area that we are looking at will be our what? Our profit. And that particular profit, we know that average revenue is what is greater than our average cost at this particular output. And the profit that we are making will be what? The average what? Revenue minus average what? Cost times what? So you note the difference. You note the difference. You note the difference. You note the difference. So please note that we are still operating in the short run. So in the short run, they make what? Profit. Okay. But if a firm is actually making a loss, in the firm can also make a loss in the short run. If you are actually making a loss, remember that here, your average cost, where is it? Here, average cost is greater than average revenue. Is that not it? Here, average cost is greater than average revenue. So if you begin production and you produce this, you can make a what? A loss. Are you getting it? Because your average cost will be more than your average what? Revenue. As you begin to increase your production, your average cost actually falls. Is that not it? At this particular point, will you make a profit or you will make a loss?
But the woman be around.
You will make a profit. Is that not it? But that particular profit that you are making is small. That is not the optimal profit. You only make the optimal profit at a point where your marginal revenue is equal to what? The marginal cost. And that is when you make the maximum what? Profit. So you're aiming to produce at that particular point where your marginal revenue is equal to what? The marginal cost. So remember, we said in the conditions that if for a perfect competitive market, we are talking about free entry and free what? Free exit. Free entry and free exit. In the short run, you are making profit. Let's say, let's make a strong assumption that pure water business is a perfect competitive market. So there is free entry, free exit. If you decide to set up a pure water business and you are making profit, people will actually see you are making profit. And because it's free entry, the following day, Muda will also come and open same business to also make what? The profit. The following day, someone will also come because the market is what? It's perfectly competitive and there is free entry. As more and more sellers are coming on board, you compete away profit. And in fact, in the short run, we call this one abnormal what? Profit. Some also call it supernormal profit. Supernormal. So this profit that you are making is called what? Abnormal profit or supernormal profit. Okay. Now, someone can also come in the short run and make a what? And make a loss. And if I make a loss, it's not by force. I decide to do what? Exit, because exit is also what? Free. As people are coming on board to compete away the profit, some will also be leaving because they are making a what? A loss. So you will realize that in the long run, we have the what is the name? The average cost here. Okay. We have the marginal cost here. We have the average revenue, marginal revenue, and then what? Price or demand. Here, the first thing we are finding is what? The output level where marginal revenue is equal to what? Marginal cost. What is that output level? This is our marginal revenue, okay? And this is our what? This is our what? Marginal revenue, and this is our what? They meet at what? This particular point. This particular point. Is that not it? At that particular point, what is the profit and what is the loss? Remember here, we are moving from short run to long run. In the long run, here, total average revenue and then average cost. That is what we will be comparing to know whether we are making a loss or we are making a what? A profit. In this particular case, what is the average revenue at this particular output? It's also here. Is that not it? What is the average cost? It's also what? Here. So even when you look at the average cost, average revenue minus what? Average what? Average cost. You will get what? You will get what? 0. So here, or break even. And it is that break even that we call the normal what? The normal profit. the normal profit, or the what? The break even, or the break even. So please note that the question is, in the long run, remember short run to long run. Short run, people make abnormal what? Profits, okay? And as people are coming on board, entering to also sell that same product, they compete away your what? Your profits. So in the long, and if some people are also making losses in the short run, they will also do what? Because there is free entry, there is free what? Exit. So in the long run, all players or firms in a perfect competitive market will be making what? Normal profit, because those who would have been making losses will exit the market, and then those who would have entered will compete away the what? The profit. So all firms in the perfect competitive market will be making a what? A normal what? Profit. So when you look at it from this perspective, the firms are making a what? A normal profit only in the long run. So if I ask you to illustrate using diagrams, okay, why firms make normal profits in the long run, it is just this one, and then what? And then this one. And the explanation is just what? Free entry, and then what? The free exits. I'll ask this. Yes, I'll definitely ask this one. So it's just this one, and then what? This one. In the short run, they make profits. And because there is free entry, free exit, people enter the market. And as they enter the market in the short run, they compete away the what? The profit. That's the supernormal or the abnormal profit. And those making loss would have also exited the market. Okay. So in the long run, all those who have entered the market in the short run would have competed away all the what? The profit, leaving only the normal profit or break even for those who will still be there. The exit will come on board when people are making losses, and the entry will come when people are making what? Profit, because you will have enticed your colleagues to also, come on board to do what? To sell that same product. Maybe the market for soap, you are selling your soapy soap, making profit. Today you are wearing wax or GTV. The following day, Holland, your neighbor will say you are making money. Then the following morning, you also see your neighbor selling that same soap. So they will compete away that particular profit. Instead of making 100 profit a day, or it will be reducing. So at the end of the day, in the long run, all of you will be making what? Normal profits. Any question? Any question? So in the long run, no firm makes a loss in the perfect competitive market, because once you are making a loss, you should what? Exit the market. Now, there is another important thing. So at what point should you exit the market? Which means at what point should you stop producing? Remember here, where is it? Here, firms are making, they are making profits, is that not it? Here, firms are making what? Losses. Here, firms are making what? Loss. But to incur this particular loss, should you exit the market? Because you will know that as you keep on producing, there's going to be some amount of profit that you will make later. But there is a particular point where the firm should cease to operate. And that particular point is very critical. A firm should cease, please note, a firm should cease operating. A firm should cease operating if the amount that you are selling the products, is that not it, which is price, in a perfect competitive market, is the same thing as your what? Okay, let me follow it. The same thing as your average revenue, which is the same thing as your what? Marginal revenue. This is the revenue aspect, okay? A firm should cease to operate, okay? If how much you are getting, okay, is less than your average variable cost. Your average variable. Remember the variable cost you are talking about, how much you incur to produce, and that's the input cost. So if you divide by any other output level, and that particular cost is more than how much you are bringing on board, which is what the revenue side, then you should cease production, which means that the shutdown point is the point where your average revenue is less than your what? Your average, yes. So you should shut down at any output level where the average revenue is what? Is less than the average what? Cost, and the average variable cost. In other words, the critical point is to be using the average what? The revenue being equal to the what? Average variable cost. I'm just shortening it because I don't want to write the other ones, which is the what? Marginal revenue or price. So this is the shutdown point. So a firm should shut down when the average revenue is less than the average variable cost. So which means your key concentration should also be on the focus where the average revenue or the marginal revenue is equal to what? But remember here, there's no way I left out the average cost curve, which I'm now coming to draw. Remember here is average variable cost, but here is what? So now let's look at this. So if you have quantity cost here or revenue here, we have, remember this one is what? Maybe let's say average what? Cost, average variable cost, average what? Fixed cost, marginal what? Cost. What will be the shutdown point? Remember, this is the minimum point of what? So anytime you are talking of shutdown, then your focus should be on average variable cost. So this is the average variable cost. What is the minimum point? It is here. I get it. That is the minimum point of that's the lowest average variable cost we will incur, which is here. Which is here. Which is here. So this is the average what? Variable cost. Remember I said this is cost or what? Or revenue. So this particular point can also represent your price or your revenue and the rest. So if you trace it like this, here can also be the price, average what? Revenue, marginal revenue and the rest. And this particular output, it is the shutdown output. That is the minimum. To the right, what is happening? Average variable cost is what? Is greater than, I get it, is greater than this one. So you as a firm should never produce to the right of any output. So at this particular minimum point, that is the shutdown point. That is the critical point. Are you getting it? So do not produce at any output above this particular one. In the short run, yes. So that is the shutdown point. So here, remember here, what is happening here? Where is average revenue is here? Where is marginal cost is here? I get it. This is what? This is what? Average cost. And this is what? This is average revenue. So which one is greater than the other? Average cost. So you are making a what? A loss at this particular one output. You can still make a loss and be in business. I get it. So you may decide to increase the production. This you will still make the what? The loss. Is that not it? You will still make the loss. But for a firm to now fold up and shut down, it's the point where the average what? Variable cost is exceedingly higher than the average what? Revenue cost, which means that you can no longer contain the losses that you are making. So at that particular point, it is advisable for you to do what? To shut down as a firm, because your average, revenue is not matching up with the what is the average variable cost. Okay. Any question? So I've finished that particular slide. So now let's look at the last part, which I will introduce, which is also very important. Also very important. Which I think it will come definitely. So let's make progress. Like I said, today everything is going to come. You should be happy, is that not it? Would I ask those online? I hope you can. Do you have any question? Okay. So now let's make progress. Let's make progress. Now we know that a firm should always be looking at maximizing output. We have two things. We are looking at today, we are looking at optimization. We are looking at optimization, maybe optimization of economic functions. Optimization of economic functions. Now, as a firm, you should be interested in maximizing something and minimizing something. Are you getting it? Or even as an individual. Now, let's look at this. Maximize and minimizing something. Yes, so you should be maximizing something and minimizing what? Something. So we have maximize and minimize. So as a firm, what should you be aiming to maximize? Excellent. One is what? Profit. Another is what? Another is what? Revenue or your sales, yes. You should also be interested in maximizing or what? Output. You should be interested in minimizing cost. You should also be interested in minimizing excellent loss. As an individual, you should be interested in maximizing your what? That what? Huh? Huh? That's salary. Yes, satisfaction or utility. So note. No problem. Quality. Now, these are the key things that we want to maximize as a firm, and these are some of the things that we want to minimize as a firm. Optimization is basically looking at that particular output level, okay, or that particular level of outputs that will help you to do what? Maximize profit, or that particular output level that will help you to maximize revenue, or that here we are looking at what? Outputs, yes, so it won't come in. Here we are looking at utility, okay? So we are looking at maybe at that quantities of commodity that you will consume, that will let you do what? Maximize your what? Your utility. We are looking at that particular output level, that will help you to do what? Minimize your cost, or that will help you to minimize your what? Your loss. So for the optimization, we are looking at how do we maximize the good things and how do we minimize the bad things. Now, we may want to know how much we want to produce. And once we are producing, your focus is on making profit. But the key challenge is, how do you know the exact production level to be able to do what? To maximize profit. In other words, you will also be interested in producing, and your production level is dependent, which is your output, or maybe if I just put Q, it's dependent on how much capital you are, bringing on board, maybe machines and machinery and equipment and the rest, and how much labor you will do what? You will combine. Is that not it? So we are looking at your capital that you are going to combine with the labor to be able to maximize your what? Your output. So how much capital should I employ, or how many machines should I set up, and then how many workers should I what? should I employ? The combination of these two will give you a particular output level that will maximize either profit or that will maximize either what? Revenue. I hope we are making some progress. Okay. So now, what you are maximizing, which means if you have something like total cost, please note, in optimization, what will you be? What will be the focus if you look at cost? Is to minimize cost. And what will be the focus if you are having revenue? Is to what? Maximize revenue. Okay. So if maybe I ask you to optimize revenue, here, what does that mean? I'm telling you to maximize what? Revenue. And if it is a cost function and I ask you to optimize, what am I asking you to do? Is to minimize. Okay. Now let's look at something. To be able to minimize or to be able to maximize, you need to know the incrementals. You need to know the incrementals or the marginal. That is the extra. So either the extra output, the extra revenue, and the rest. In other words, you should be able to know what is called differentiation. You should be able to differentiate the output level. In other words, what we have here as output here is, okay, do you prefer Q or you prefer QN? Okay, so if I give you this as Q, which is capital lever, this is called the what? The output what? The output function. This is called the output function. This is the output function. Remember, output, we are focusing on doing what? Maximizing output. Now, the function that you are going to optimize, I'm using optimize so that I can take care of the maximum and then the what? The minimum. So the function that you are going to maximize, optimize, is called the what? Please note, it's called the objective function. It's called the objective function. Which means if I have cost function, that's, I said total cost is variable cost plus what? Fixed cost. If I write it in an equation form, this, remember, I said total cost is fixed cost plus variable cost. So if I put 10 here plus maybe 2Q. In this particular case, what is 2Q? This is the variable cost. Remember I said total cost is what? Variable cost plus what? Fixed cost. And I've just done it. This 10 plus this. Remember from the beginning, we said the variable cost is a function of what? Output. As you continue to produce, variable cost will also be increasing. So when you look at the total cost, it is that part of total cost that varies with what? With outputs. So if this is the total cost, what is that part of total cost? That depends on output. It's this one. So this is it. So which is the variable what? Cost. Now, if this is the variable cost, which is 2Q, if I'm producing output 1, variable cost will be what? Are you getting it? So if I'm producing output 1, variable cost will be what? 2. If I'm producing output 2, variable cost will be 4. If I'm producing output 5, variable cost will be 10. Are you getting it? So it varies with output. But what about fixed cost? It's fixed. So you realize that irrespective of how much you are producing, here will still remain the same. So this is the fixed cost side, and this is the what? The variable cost side. We will want to do what? This is total cost. So in this case, are we minimizing or maximizing? Excellent. So in this case, our focus should be on minimizing total cost, okay, at a certain level of what? Output. At a certain level of what? Output. At a certain level of output. So this particular function that we are going to minimize, because it's total cost, we are minimizing. So this particular function is called the what? The objective, it's called the objective function. If I also give you revenue, if I also give you revenue, and you know total revenue is what? Price times quantity. And I tell you to maximize, and I tell you to optimize total revenue. What will you do? It means you are maximizing total what? Revenue. And if I give you profits and I tell you to do what? To maximize or to optimize. So to optimize, it means you are going to maximize what? Profit, which is the total revenue, which is the price times what? Quantity minus the what? Minus the total cost. What you are maximizing here is called the what? The objective what? Function. Now let's take the discussion a little bit higher. To be able to optimize, to be able to so I say we'll meet in the law. Okay, now let's make progress. I've not reached where I wanted to reach. Okay, let's make progress. Let's make progress. Let's make progress. Like I said, optimization is largely about what? It's largely about differentiation. And you optimize, implying you minimize or you maximize. Okay, so you are talking about a certain maximum point, or you are also talking about a certain minimum point. So at this particular, we are looking at what? The minimum points, that's minimization, or we are talking about what? The maximum point or maximization. So your total revenue function is like this, and your total cost function typically should also be like this, or your average cost function that you are also going to minimize should also be like this. In other words, our focus should be on the what? The minimum what? The minimum point. Now, remember last someone said about stationarity, that are stationary. So if you are talking about maximum, which means there is some kind of what? Stationarity there. If it is a stationary, it means there is a saddle point, what we call a saddle point. There is a saddle point, which is nothing happens here when output is doing what? It's changing. Are you getting it? And even here too, there is nothing happening here. The change remains what? The same at that minimum what? Point. Now, to be able to know the stationary level, at stationary, when you say at stationary, it could mean at maximum, or it could also mean at what? Minimum. If it is a revenue function, then maybe instead of just saying at stationary, you can just write at what? Maximum, so that we will know you know what you are talking of. If it is a cost function, it will be at what? At minimum. Okay. Now, at this particular point, the change here should be what? Should be zero. Either the change in revenue should be zero, or the change in cost should be what? Zero. And the change in revenue is the what? The marginal revenue should be zero, or the change in cost, which is the what? The marginal cost should be what? Should be zero. Now, if you are going to do this, it means that, let me just go slowly here. If I have something like this, y, just for us to refresh, and I have something like maybe say x, maybe 2x plus 3. No, let me just do it this way so that before I graduate, this one, how much will y change as a result of change in what? In x. Okay, as a result of change in x. It means simply we are telling you to differentiate this y, okay, all over what? This x. Here, any number standing alone means typically it is risen to the power 1. Is that not it? It is risen to the power 1, which means there is 1 here, but we are not seeing it. Okay, so if you are going to differentiate, you have to bring this particular one here. Okay, Then you have your what? Your 2x. You still have that one, and you do what? You minus 1 here. So you minus 1 here. With this one, you are going to have what? 2x raised to the power 0. Any number raised to the power 0, anything raised to the power 0 is what? Is 1. So which means you are going to have 2, 1, which you will get what? 2, which you will give you 2. So which means that the difference, how much y will change when x changes by what? 1 unit will be what? Will be 2. Now let's use, yes?
Any number raised to the power 0. Is it 0 or 1?
No, any number raised to the power 0 is 1, and any number raised to the power 1 is what? It's that same number.
Okay. X raised to the power 1 means x times 1.
No. If you have 5 raised to the power 1, okay, it means that particular 5 is standing what? Alone, okay? And if you have 5 raised to the power 0, it means that particular 5 here will be what? Will be 1. Those are the indices. I don't know if you can remember. So, but here will be what? It will be that same number. So even if I write cos rep raised to the power 1, it will still be what? Cos rep. And if I raise it to the power 0, it will be what? 1. Good. So in this particular case, if I have maybe say output, okay, and that particular output that I'm saying maybe is a function of labor. How much we will produce depends on what? Labor, okay. And I'm saying the output that we are going to produce is depending on labor, and that particular output function maybe is 3L raised to the power 3 plus 2L, maybe plus 5. Just an example. This is it. Remember, this is output. So in optimization, our focus will be on maximizing it. So we are looking at the change in output as a result of changes in what? In labor, as a result of changes in labor. So in this particular case, we are looking at what? The change in output as a result of change in what? In labor. So here, what will we get? So let's do it one by one. Here. Okay. Here, what will we get? Is it 6 or 9?
9. 9L.
Okay, maybe let me add something. Maybe 2 plus 5L, maybe plus 10. Example, so that we know. Now I have the different powers. So here will be what? 9L, excellent, raised to the power 2. You get it? This times this minus 1. Are we together? Plus, here will be what? 4L raised to the power what? 1. Plus what? Plus 5. Because here is raised to the power what? 1. So this times this will be what? 5. And then you have your L here. Minus, so raised to the power 0, which is the same. So plus here will be what? 0, because here is raised to the power what? Is it 1 or 0? 0. So this one times this one is like 0 times 10, 0 minus this. So this times this will be what?
No. So you see, this was what I was getting confused. That's what I was asking you. X to the power 0 is 0 or x?
No, it's 0.
Yes, that's what I was saying. But
I'm saying, okay, maybe I didn't hear you. Okay. Any number raised to the power 1 is that number. And any number raised to the power 0. 1. I don't know what I said something different.
So why is 10 raised to the power 0 is 0?
Remember, we are not saying 10 raised to the power 0 is 0. We are differentiating. Okay. So it's like anything standing alone, like here, okay? Here is what? It means this. Okay. So in differentiating, we are also looking at the dq all over what? dl, which is the labor. Yeah. Here, there is nothing like labor attached to it. There's no coefficient. So because we are differentiating, we are going to multiply the power. Okay, bring it here. So it's like this particular 0 you are seeing is here. Into brackets, 10. We have 0 here, minus what? 0. 1. 0 times any number is what? 0. Is 0. So it is not the raised to power that is bringing it to 0. It is this multiplication. Oh, yes. It's always the case. It must be D. Okay, for only one variable. In other words, if it is a function of one variable, which is what? L, it will be D. But if later I introduce another variable, which is capital, maybe capital labor, it will no longer be D. It will be what? It will be delta. So delta Q all over delta L. Are you getting it? Delta Q. And what you are seeing here, dQ, dL, is the same thing as change in what? Q all over change in what? L. So let me just finish this. I know we are 5 minutes ahead of time, but let's just conclude this. So this is what we have differentiated. Are we together? Any number raised to the power 1 is what? That number. Oh, if the elder brother of this one is coming. Is the elder brother of this one.
The minus 1 is constant.
It's constant, yes. It's constant. So here, please note that 10 here is constant. 10 here is constant from the equation. And please note, 10 here is constant. And the differential of a constant is what? Is 0. Please note, the differential of a constant is what? 0. Please note, so this is the differential. Okay, we can go back to this one if we integrate. If I have stated this is the cost function, if I have stated, maybe instead of saying quantity, then I'll say this is the total cost function with the assumption that if I say this is rather the total cost function, here will be what? Excellent. Who said fixed cost first? Where is the sheet? I don't know. All of you. Okay, then they are saying all of you. So okay, so now we are concluding. We are going to conclude. So please, here we are going to do what we have differentiated. Q. That is the quantity with respect to labor, which is the L. And this is what we are getting here. So now the next thing is to find the stationary point. So it is now at stationary. Okay. Please note at stationary. If it is output, like I mentioned, instead of just writing as stationary, you then say at what? At maximum. So at that stationary or maximum point that I showed, remember I drew some curve. At that stationary or maximum point, remember if this is the output, remember it's maximum. So at that maximum point, the change here should be equal to what? 0, which means that at stationary or maximum, our change here, which is dq all over dl, should be equal to what? 0, which means the whole of this will be equal to what? 0. In other words, 9L squared all over what? X plus 4L plus 5 should be equal to what? Should be equal to 0. Are we together? Should be equal to 0. Should be equal to 0. So if we work it out, this will be our output what? Level. In other words, if we have something like this, here we can have a L out, 9L plus what? 4, plus 5 is equal to what? Is equal to 0. It's equal to 0. So when you look at it, what will make this one to be equal to 0? What will make this equation to be equal to 0? Write your name and put marks that you want. Are you getting it? It's increasing. Now, what will make this one to be equal to 0? It means the whole of this should be minus what? 5 plus 5 before it comes to 0. Are we together? Yeah. So we can just put L9, this one, plus what? 4, is equal to what? Minus 5. Then we can work it out. But that's the bottom line that I'm trying to draw is, at that maximum point, the differential should be equal to what? Should be equal to 0. So if I give you maybe something like, let me just show you what I'm aiming at bringing. Let me just show you what's. Let me just show you. I'm not finding it. I'm not finding it. Would I mean, is it 30? I mentioned some 304 or so. Let me see. 304. Okay, so let's go there. 304. No, this is very simple. Okay, so I found something. I found something. So let's look at this one. I'm just going to write it. It's going to be one of the things. This is very easy. I'm sure it will be your first question when you are going to answer, because you will realize that this is the easiest. No, this is the easiest. Like I will say, if you practice, no, let me just write it. Page. So for those, it's page 304. Page 304. Now let's look at something. The question is saying that a firm's short-run production function is given by Q is equal to 6L to minus 0.2. Okay, good. 3, excellent.
So,
yes.
Which of the books are you referring to?
I gave you the mathematics for economics. Is it for economy and business or business and economics? Now the A part, where L, please note, where L is what? Where L is labor, okay? Where L is number of workers. So where L is number of workers. So we are looking at how many workers should we employ to be able to do what? To maximize output. Now the question is, find the number of workforce that maximizes what? Output. Find the number of workforce that maximizes output. You shouldn't just employ anyhow because you have the capacity to employ. You should be employing an output, you should be employing the number of workers that will maximize the output to you as a firm. So in this particular case, please note that the question is, find the size of the workforce that maximizes what? Output. In other words, find L that will produce maximum output for you as a firm. So how many people, number of workers should we employ? Should we employ 20 as a firm, 30 as a firm, or 15 as a firm? If this is your objective function, you remember, I said the function that you are going to maximize or minimize is your what? Objective. So with this particular one, you have this particular function. So to be able to do what? To know the maximum, the level of workers or the amount of workers that maximizes output, you need to do what? First, you need to differentiate the quantity with respect to what? To labor, with respect to labor. So in this case, it is just going to be what? All over what? So here will be what? Here will be what? Asia, here will be what? Muda, +5. So here will be what? Are you getting it?
Yeah, finish. Because
And then I wanted only this one. So here is what? 12L. Remember, it is these two times what? 6 minus what? 1. So that's why we are getting 12L. So here will be what? 0.1. 6L, excellent, 6L squared. 6L squared. So once you do this, this is the next stage. This is the first stage. You differentiate it with respect to whatever you are being told to do. Okay. The next stage is to now know the what? At stationary points. Or remember, this is what? Output. So it will be at maximum. Okay. So instead of saying at stationary, you can also say at what? At maximum. At that stationary or maximum point, the change in your quantity as a result of the change in labor should be equal to what? 0. And where is it? It is this one. So we are just equating this particular equation, which is 12L minus what? 0.6 L square equal to what? 0. Are we together? Equal to 0. Equal to 0. Equal to 0. Now let's make progress. What is here? What is here? So we can factorize. So we can have the L out. What will be here? 12 minus 6L is equal to what? 0. In this particular case, this times this should be equal to 0. It means okay, that's good. Another one. Remember, it's like x times y is equal to 0. So what times this will give you 0? It means either x is equal to 0 or y equal to 0. Are you getting it? So in this particular case, it's either. So in this particular case, it is either. How do we spell either? It's either L is equal to 0 in a way that 0 times the whole thing will be 0. Are you getting it? Or the entire thing in the bracket, which is 12 minus 0.6 L, is equal to what? 0. So if L is equal to 0, it means your number of workers is what? 0. It means you have not employed anyone. If you don't employ anyone, will you produce an output? So which means at 0 level, there is no economic sense. So at 0 labor level, it doesn't make any economic sense. And later I'll show you why. Are you getting it? So which means it's either L is just equal to 0 or the entire thing is equal to what? 0. So we have solved this one, saying L is 0. So let's look at the other one. The other one is 12 minus 0.6L is equal to what? 0. So here, what will we get? 12 is equal to 0.6L. We divide here by 0.6. Divide here by 0.6. So here, L will be what? L will be 20. Which means that we should employ how many workers? 20 workers. The other point is, you do not stop here because we are talking about output and the question is even saying to maximize, which means if you perceive the curve, it should be like this. Just to confirm, the second derivative, which means this is the first derivative, okay? The second derivative will be to just differentiate this one again. And here will be 12 minus this times this, then minus 1. Are you getting it? But that is not going to be our focus. Here, L is what? 20, or L is what? 0. And I said the first one does not make economic sense. But let's look at it. Find the number of workers that maximizes what? Output. So the number of workers that maximizes output. Where is our output function? It's this one. And where is the change? Remember the change, we look at it here. Are you getting it? If we put L equal to 0 here, then it means here will be what? 12, 0, is that not it? Minus 0.6, 0 is about 2. The entire thing will be what? The entire thing will be, because this time 0 is 0. So the entire thing will be what? Will be 0. However, if you put L is equal to what? 20 there, what will you get? L, 20 minus 0.6, 20 raised to the power 2. You will get a particular maximum value. Are we together? Okay. Now the next question is find the number of workforce that maximizes average product of labor. Is just to divide this one. Yes.
Sorry, before I continue. Can you explain to me again why you said L equal to 0 doesn't make economic sense?
Remember, we are saying this is the output the firm is producing. This is the output. Are we together?
Yeah.
This is the output. Fix L raised to the power 2 minus this one. And L is the number of what? Workers. Which means how much you are producing as a firm depends on how many people you do what? You employ. Which is basically, so I remember this is written in compact form from the beginning of the class. So this is an explicit form, okay? In this particular instance, the firm is producing an output using some number of workers, but L here is 0 workers. Are you getting it? It means that you as a firm, if labor is 0, it means there is no worker working for you and there is no what? Output. But you have an output that you have specified. This is how much I'm producing. And this is the number of workers that I want to employ. How many workers should I employ to maximize that output level? So it means there is some number of workers that you need to engage to be able to maximize your output. And that some number of workers is what? Is 12. If you have 0 people working and you are still producing, I don't know whether there are genes working for you. Are you getting it? So for you as a firm to produce, remember our factors of production. We are talking about what? Labor and capital and the rest. So there should be some labor working to be able to produce for you. Or it's still not clear? Who can explain it much better to him? Who can explain much better and take marks?
Okay, he's finding a problem with the 0. And for us to get the 0 explanation, you see, he says as stationary, there's some level where one level, the change is equal to 0. There's no change. So that's when we have the 0. So at the maximum, it is 0. So that means that when we are now applying it to at stationary, when we are now applying, we are using equating all the equation to 0.
Sorry. What I want to understand.
For instance, if you have something that you want, remember, the firm's production function is only a function of labor. The firm is using only labor to do what? To produce. The firm is using only labor to produce. Without labor, there is no production. So proceed.
Okay, my point was using the equation 12L minus 0.6
okay.
equals 0. So to equate this equation for this equation to be 0.
For which equation?
For 12L minus 0.6
to equal to 0.
Equal to 0 is either the whole of the whole equation at the left side.
Which one is that? This one.
Which is 12L. Okay, you have to make all a 0. Which
yes.
is putting it, breaking it down. That is L into brackets 12 minus 0.6L.
Yeah.
So to either make it 0, either L is equal to 0, or 12 minus 0.6L is equal to 0.
0. That is what we have done.
So and then you said L is equal to 0. Doesn't make economic sense.
Yes, yes.
So that
it means labor is equal to 0, which means there is no one working. I get it. You have not employed anybody. So if you don't employ anybody, will you have output? No. So it doesn't make sense, because the firm is producing this particular output using this labor as the only input in the production. And the question is not saying the firm does not produce. You are producing using a conveyor, using labor as the only input in your production. So if there is no labor, it doesn't make sense for you to have what? An output. Are you getting it? So here, okay.
All right, Doc. So what? So is there a condition or a situation where you will either equate labor to 0, or not? Because, for instance, if you say, assuming the question says the company doesn't produce, it means that labor is 0.
It means labor is 0. Yes.
So at that
which is the first one?
Is equal to 0, which now makes sense.
That's at that condition. If the firm doesn't produce here, it means if you are saying the firm doesn't produce, means there is no output function. Are you getting it?
Okay.
If you are not producing, there is no output function. That output function is displaying how much you are going to combine your labor to be able to produce that particular output. So if there is no output, which means there is no labor working for you. Yes.
Thank you.
What about
then this, oh no, you will still have some amount of labor, even if you automate all processes. Maybe packaging, even if you employ someone, you use a machine to package and everything, then it means that in this particular instance, assuming there is no labor at all, we are making a very strict, restrictive, assumption. Assume there is no labor, which means your entire production process will depend on what? Will depend on what? Will depend on capital. So in this particular case, we will be looking at the amount of capital to what? To employ or to use to be able to maximize your output. So in this case, we will now be telling you to use what? To set up maybe 20 equipment or 20 machines. But there is also going to be a place, maybe area, typically, where your output will depend on what? Both capital and what? And labor. So we are just looking at one side. So we can also look at what? The other side, and then we combine the two. Because it is not usual, for you, it is unusual, okay, for you to use only one, input to be able to produce. So later we'll be looking at how to combine the two and be able to know what optimal number of machines should I use, and then what optimal number of what labor should I use to be able to optimize the output. Even in the production of pure water, you will still need the pure water machine setup, and you will still need people to do the packaging. So how many people will you employ to package, and how many machines should you do what setup to be able to maximize the number of bags of pure water that you will produce? And that is something that will be coming in the exam. Like I mentioned, this is going to be there, but this is just the beginning. Any question? Any question? We have exceeded the time. Unless you want me to continue. Yes. Yes, that is it. Yes. So the answer is going to be the value where L is equal to 20. Like I mentioned, this one does not make. So the firm should produce, should employ 20 labor if they want to maximize output. Oh no, you substitute. That's what we have done. Yes, I didn't calculate. What will you get? Are you getting it? You substitute it. Okay. Any question before we close? You say what? Okay. Now, this one, remember, please. Remember, this is are we together? This is the incremental. I don't know whether I canceled the other one. This is the output level, okay? This is the output the firm is producing. This is the incremental. So you should be able to maximize your output. Now, at this particular labor, the firm should be maximizing this particular what? Objective function, or the firm should be maximizing this particular what? Output. This will give you the incremental, and then the overall output the firm will produce at the maximum. Remember, this is the maximum, this is the output level. I don't know whether I put it somewhere and I can't say, but it's this one. 6. What is L here? 20 minus 0.2, 20 to the power 3. So this is whatever that you will do, this is the maximum output you will make. Are we together? Whatever that you will do to be able to incur the maximum output, okay, you should employ 20. And when you employ 20, this is the maximum number of output that you are going to incur. Any question? Now, there is also a question on the average products. That one, you just divide the L, this one, by L. You just divide the whole thing by what? By L. So here, when you divide, you are going to get what? 6L minus 0.2 L squared. Is that not it? So this is the average what? Product. And what will you do? You then differentiate the average product. Here will be what? 6 minus 0.2 0.4. So here will be what? At max, here also a stationary. A stationary here will be what? 0. So you are going to have 6 is equal to 0.4L. So L will be equal to what? 6 divided by 0.4. 15. Okay. 15. So 15. So to be able to maximize the average product of labor, you should be able to employ 15 workers. 15 workers. Any question? Those online, do you have any question? Any question? Any question? Thank you. Where? You get what? You get what? That is the change. Remember we said, are we together? Are we together? Remember we said at stationary will be what? Any question? Any question? You are going. I have leakage for you, and you are running away. Eh? I should give you. Time has passed. Maybe next week. Next week. But you have to be practicing. You have to be. These things are quite easy. Huh? I can sell it. I can sell. Share what? But that's what we are doing. It's in the book.